Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Joyful Journeys. We're here in week number 4 of the spring 2024 Girls on the Run season. So excited to dive into this week's topic of what our participants are learning at Girls on the Run and Heart and Soul, our middle school program, with a Heart and Soul coach. Hannah Flanders is here with us today. She is a Heart and Soul coach. She coached a middle school team with us last year. She's also tackling a GOTR team for the first time this year. She sits on our coach advisory council and also works professionally for Innova. So Hannah, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's start. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do professionally, and about your coaching experience last season when you were a Heart and Soul coach.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned professionally what I do. So I am by trade, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, which means that I actually have two jobs. I work in private practice with kids. I work on issues like anxiety, ADHD, depression with them, and then my other job is with Innova, and I work as a clinical coordinator for their mental health psychiatric units. Um, on a personal level, I just got engaged, so I've been planning a wedding. I'm getting married in April,
Congratulations.
so
That's so
thanks.
exciting.
So that's been my entire life for the last few months. Um, so yeah, Girls on the Run and Heart and Soul has been a really good kind of distraction and coping mechanism of my own. Um, yeah, so last season, last fall was my first time ever working with GOTR or Heart and Soul. And it's funny, I initially thought I was just, volunteering to kind of coach girls how to run. I love running. I've been running since I was younger. My family runs. And so I was like, oh, this will be a fun, reprieve from wedding planning and things like that. And my full-time job. And I thought it would be more about like just kind of teaching, like a typical team sport coaching. And I showed up to the training, the new coach training. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is a very pleasant surprise. It's very just how it's focused on, team building and self-esteem and things like that. I was a little bit jealous that I didn't get kind of that emotional development that a lot of the girls in GOTR are getting. So
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. And your story is so similar to a lot of our coaches. I'm sure there's a
Hmm.
coach out there watching this right now going, that was me too. You have that love of running, you want to share it with the younger generation. And then you come in and you're like, whoa, this is so much deeper and on a different level than I initially thought it was. And it really lends itself to you becoming a real mentor, a true mentor for the girls outside of just physical activity, becoming a mentor, in addressing their mental and emotional and social health as well. Um,
Hmm.
which is what we're going to focus on today because this week the girls across all of Northern Virginia, they are on those topics about emotions, feeling their feelings and how do they communicate them, to their caregivers, how do they communicate them to each other, which is a really tough topic for a lot of us. So in your work as a therapist, working with kids, what do you think is the most important tool that we can teach elementary age kids about communicating those tough topics like emotions or a really strong feeling?
Hmm. So this may not come as a huge surprise, but I think well, actually, for probably both elementary and middle, probably as young as you can. I think the most important thing, and I talk about this a lot, like when I'm working with kids in therapy too, is that kids are learning how to identify their own emotions. I think a lot of times, I mean, not just kids, like humans, adults, will, a situation may happen and they may just react or have an emotion and not really understand it and just have a behavior that to react to the situation. And it's so important in order to kind of better control yourself and better understand yourself to essentially kind of first understand the emotion that you're feeling, kind of the why behind it. Um, that'll help you better understand like the behavior and the reactions that you have, and your thoughts as well. Like I don't think a lot of people realize, and a lot of like what you teach in therapy too, and actually as a GOTR coach, is just how your emotions and how your thoughts, like you can identify them and be able to use them to control your actions and your thoughts as well. Because your thoughts and your actions can affect your emotions and feelings. And it goes, it's very cyclical. So I think, probably to answer the question for both the elementary and middle school, the first the first tool really is identifying like how a situation makes you feel.
100%. And that resonates so well. I mean, I can speak to it as a GOTR coach. I coach GOTR teams, elementary school girls, and the way that it's framed and what the girls are learning this week is to bring it top of mind. And the way that we bring it top of mind with the girls is, hey, this emotion, is it comfortable or uncomfortable? And I really appreciate that framing too, where there's no good or bad emotions, they're just emotions. But if we can start by slowing down and saying, I'm feeling really happy and joyful right now. That's a comfortable emotion. That gets the girl to stop, take a breath, think of the framework and identify it, bring it and have her understand I'm feeling an emotion and I'm identifying it. And similarly, wow, I'm feeling guilt, I'm feeling shame. Those are uncomfortable for me to feel. And same thing. Hey, that's what I'm feeling right now about this situation, but I have the tool that I can identify it and recognize that in myself. I love
Yeah, yeah. I remember actually last season talking with someone. There was a girl that was like, I'm always angry about everything. And I was like, anger is actually a secondary emotion. A lot of times when you're feeling angry, it's because you're feeling something else, whether it's, sadness, embarrassment, rejection, it could be a lot of different things. And sometimes anger is the most like human or easy emotion to react with. And, a lot of times people that deal with anger don't even know why or don't even know where it's coming from. So a lot of times, identifying the emotion and like what's behind it is so important.
100%. Yeah. And at Heart and Soul, I feel like you guys with the middle school girls are so primed to take that deeper dive, right? To say,
Hmm.
well, let's dive deeper. Or like, what is that anger coming from? Is there another word you could use to describe how you're feeling and kind of working down to the root cause or the feeling and getting them to kind of extrapolate that. I kind of think of it as working a muscle, the same as running. You build up your endurance, you run a little bit further. The more time you take to practice self-reflection and self-assessment, the better you get at it, and the easier it is to just automatically have the framework of mind to identify your emotion and be able to communicate it in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the kind of at the middle school, like heart and soul age, like they will rise to the challenge. If you give them the tools and the education, like I think a light bulb went off when I explained anger
Mhm.
last season, like you know, they will rise to the occasion and they can get pretty deep. I'm a little jealous I didn't have this type of support when I was a middle schooler.
I know we all say that so often, but hey, we're doing it now and that's what matters. And I love what you said about a tool and how the Heart and Soul girls rise to the challenge. So with your experience as a Heart and Soul coach, for those of you who don't know, Heart and Soul, the middle school program starts every practice where all the girls do a self-assessment. They start each practice using a tool that we call the girl wheel. So can you describe the girl wheel kind of in your own words and how youth and adults alike can use a tool like this for self-assessment to practice a more positive relationship with not just our mental health, but our overall health?
Hmm. Yeah, and I really like the girl wheel. So essentially, if I had to kind of describe it in like layman's terms, I guess it's kind of like the various components that make a person whole. Like it's a very like holistic way for girls to kind of understand that they have many layers. Like I think a lot of times especially at the middle school age, um, they're often looking at like they're often thinking about topics like looks or like popularity and um I feel like the girl wheel, just in my experience using it last season, was that it helped them kind of recognize that there's so much more like uniqueness and depth to them than they realize. I remember, I think it was maybe even the first week last year or somewhere early on. The whole lesson was about what makes me unique, and
Mhm.
then we did an activity where think they wrote down like a characteristic about themselves that they really liked. And we had to we made sure it wasn't something physical or like only physical. So it was like I'm smart or I'm strong, I can do the most push-ups. And we had them write them down, and other girls would like write their names next to those characteristics, and they would kind of find out like what they had in common and what made people unique. And I think the girls, I mean, I enjoyed seeing that because I saw a lot of light bulbs go off for them when they were like, oh yeah, I'm really strong and I'm really good at science, or I'm really good at math, or it really created I think a good opportunity for them to create more, I guess, positive self-esteem and then respect for others too. Like I remember hearing the girls kind of complimenting each other and saying, "Oh yeah, like you are really strong," or "Remember that time you did that?" Because a lot of the girls were friends and knew each other already.
Hmm.
Um, so the girl wheel, I feel like um, it was a really good way, I think, like a really good tangible way for kids to realize that they have multiple layers and multiple different entities within themselves.
Yeah. And if an adult uses something like the girl wheel and decides to check in with, hey, these are all the separate parts that make me who I am. What can I say about my mind? What can I say about my body, my physical characteristics, my strength? What can I say about my heart? What can I say about the social part of my life? What can I say about my spirit? It really does help to break it down in a way that doesn't seem overwhelming, but you can take time to kind of, journal for yourself about how you feel about yourself and, use that as a tool of self-reflecting. Having this perception and experience as a therapist and also as a Girls on the Run coach, how do you see tools like the Girl Wheel as being helpful to inspiring specifically a better relationship with mental health in youth?
Hmm. Yeah, actually, I was kind of going into this question with my last answer, but I feel like I really like as a therapist, I would probably enjoy using the girl wheel as a tool, like in practice, because it does help girls, like I think on an individual level, help understand themselves better. I remember I think there was an assignment during one of the practices last season where they took kind of like a personal inventory
Mm-hmm.
of like I think they were writing down like where what falls under brain, what falls under spirit, what falls under body, different things, and they were kind of taking inventory of like what am I doing well, like what are things I should probably work on. um so I love that on an individual basis. It helps them kind of get to know understand themselves better, which is very important for self-esteem and mental health. Managing anxiety and depression and ADHD and a lot of different things that I see with kids in therapy specifically is being able to identify your emotions and kind of getting to know yourself can really help with your self-esteem. And so, being able to recognize your own strengths, um, that's something that can really that you can pull from the girl wheel especially. um and then kind of more on a group level as well. um Being able to, I feel like for kids, a lot of kids, they're with, I hate to bring up social media, but with social media a lot of times kids aren't in person the way they are with Girls on the Run or Heart and Soul, getting to know each other. And so I really enjoyed um kind of seeing girls interact and, actively like complimenting each other or like learning about each other's strengths or even sharing like things they don't feel like they're as good at and getting like instant, like real in person, real life support from other people. You don't see that kind of interaction between kids as often,
Mm-hmm.
or it more so happens on social media or the negative side of social media. And so, just from a mental health standpoint, being able to see girls supporting each other in person in real time was really cool and really impactful.
Yeah, 100%. It definitely is one of the things that I love the most about Girls on the Run is you as a coach getting to take that moment to step back because the
Mhm.
girls are doing it themselves and they're driving that positive, supportive, encouraging environment amongst themselves. And you just, I mean, when those moments happen, I sit back and I go, yes, this is what it's all about because now they have this tool, they have this spirit of collaboration and encouragement that they're just going to take beyond what they're doing here at practice.
Right. Yeah. There's a saying in therapy actually that, if you're doing a lot of the talking in the therapy session, you're doing it wrong. Like you really should be, especially in like a group setting too. Like
Mhm.
you should be kind of posing a question or providing a skill and allowing the participant to run with it. And so that's something that I really like about the girl wheel is you kind of pose a deep question and then they run with it or they learn from it.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome. So, all of our heart and soul teams that are in week number 4, I hope you guys are loving and living your best selves in your girl wheel. We know you guys are out there absolutely crushing the game and just learning more about yourselves and your teammates in a really fun way. So lastly, kind of bring it back to communication. We know it's really important to teach kids about communicating tough topics like emotions and feelings. But what advice would you give to adults on the receiving end? What tools can a parent, a caregiver, a coach use to be supportive when kids come to us with their emotions or other tough conversations?
mhm. I would say first off, if you're an adult who's on the receiving end of like a tough conversation or a tough topic that a child is bringing to you, congrats, especially with, just thinking of my experience with Heart and Soul with middle school girls, if they're coming to you to,
Yeah.
to kind of talk to you about something that's tough, that is a huge compliment to you. You're doing something right. Um, it tells me that you're kind of creating an environment that is like warm and inviting and encouraging for them, or they feel comfortable coming to you. So that's huge, first of all, because that's unlike middle schoolers just in general, whether it be parent, coach, teacher, whatever. Um, and I guess because that means that the child trusts you and wants to share something tough with you, I think it's important as the adult to actively listen, remaining calm, supportive. It's especially important to first listen and kind of maybe ask clarifying questions because a lot of times I think as adults we may want to go into, especially parents, like may want to go into like problem solving mode,
Hmm.
which can be kind of not just for kids, for anyone, can be kind of like you're not feeling like you're being heard. So it's actually really important to actively listen, ask questions like, okay, so what you're telling me is, you felt this way, or explain more, kind of trying to get more information, because that kind of active listening helps people feel supported,
Hmm.
especially kids. And, once you receive the information, you don't even need to go into problem solving mode then. Um, you would then probably or should probably then say, what do you feel like you need now? Like, do you feel like you want support? Do you feel like you want problem solving or advice? Um, because you'll actually find that a lot of times um, people aren't looking for advice necessarily unless they say, I want your advice on this. Usually
Hmm.
they're just looking to like vent or talk about something like a tough conversation with somebody that they trust. So that would be my biggest piece of advice is to kind of actively listen, support, make sure that you're understanding and um, making sure that if they want a solution, you're asking that. Um, so yeah, I think just kind of actively listening is probably the most important piece.
I love that. I feel like if there's a tool that, somebody watching this can take away, it's those clarifying questions first and foremost. Dig deeper, kind of like what you did with the girl on your team. I'm thinking of that anger example of
Mhm,
say you're angry all the time. What really? Like let's do what would you say is behind the anger? What's the next step back there?
mhm,
Digging a little bit deeper, being supportive. And then I love that piece about, the next step is not problem solving all the time. The next step is asking the child what they want out of you next. And I think as adults, we have to be willing to give our kids that agency back in those tough situations. And I think that's what's going to empower them to be confident and resilient in the future of when they have the next tough thing or the next tough emotion come up, for them to feel like they can either A, come back to us and have that trusting conversation, or B, feel that they have the knowledge to work through whatever it is on their own.
mhm. And I will say, just as a disclaimer from like the therapy perspective, I always tell people, unless there's like someone that is like, unless it's a safety thing, like if it's like
Right.
someone's in
Mhm.
danger, someone's hurting you, you're hurting someone, like
Yeah,
then we'd have to probably, contact the appropriate
address
authorities.
it
But if it's something
differently.
that's like,
Yeah.
something like a tough conversation, then that would be active listening all the way. Just had to put in that disclaimer.
100%. Totally understand that. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us for this interview series for week 4. So bringing so much wonderful insight into the topics of emotions and communicating and, what us as adults can do, and a little bit of insight into heart and soul and what our middle school participants get up to when they are at practice. We talk a lot about the elementary schoolers. We do not want our middle school girls to ever feel left out. You guys are, you know, doing amazing, amazing star-powered things as well this season. And we're so excited to get a perspective on that. So thank you so much again for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We will see you guys next week for Joyful Journeys, week 5 of the spring 2024 season.
This episode of Joyful Journeys is brought to you by Girls on the Run of Northern Virginia.